Another candidate for Douglas West, Mr. Dawson, now joins us for a little chat. And the same thing I've been saying to the rest of the gentlemen who are standing. I mean, we've all seen the requisition meeting, so we've got an idea of your policies and you're going around doing that. But it's more, I'd like to come from the angle of if you'd been in government over the last year and how you'd have reacted to some of those big decisions. And obviously the first one that comes to mind is the Sefton deal. And I want to put you, as if you were in government, or certainly a member of the House of Keys, your views and how you would have voted if it had gone to a vote.
I would have had to vote against it in its current form. I think that's quite clear for me. I think the fact that there was so much, there's two parts to the loan, one which is unsecured, I think that's concerning. I think perhaps people were wrongly advised. I think there was a knee-jerk reaction, and I think that following the decision, when certain members of the Sefton group came out and said, oh, there wasn't really anything wrong, we didn't really need it, was rather sad. So again, I think I've spoken to a lot of people on the doorstep in Douglas West about this who are extremely concerned, who are looking at things like the school on Noble's Hospital site, which is grinding along, and that would only cost, when it was done in 2011, I think it was about 1.2 million. So people were concerned the way it was done. They're concerned that it wasn't done in a transparent way, and I think for the government the unfortunate part was it was a bit of a PR disaster, because they did this and then were backtracking, trying to explain why they'd done it.
So if you'd been an actual minister even, you would have questioned Comyn and the rest of them at the time and stood out from this and not gone ahead, or
Comyn?
Yeah, or you gone collective responsibility.
If I was in Comyn, I think I'd have wanted to review the whatever the proposals were very, very carefully, and I'd have asked the question: if we don't do this, what is the worst case scenario? And perhaps the worst case scenario would have been some sort of receiver coming in, or some sort of, it wouldn't have been, probably an administrator coming in, keeping the good assets going, separating the toxic assets and ongoing. So I'd have looked at what the worst case scenario was.
Let's talk about student loans. There's another one, big decision that had to be made. How would you have stood on that?
Against
any form of having to fund yourselves, or just a different formula?
In its current format, I think I'd have voted against, and I'll tell you why. Once again, what happens, I think central government come up with some very, very good ideas. They look at the problem, they come up with analysis, they come up with certain solutions. What happens then, I think certain members of, Tim will get a bit panicky about, gosh, how is this going to go down with the electorate? And then they don't decide possibly in the best way for the nation as a whole. But I've said certain things in my manifesto about this. I can remember, days when if you worked for a certain company in Douglas, they provided you with funding for your university course, and then when you came back, you had a time bar. You worked for them for 3 or 4 years, and that particular company used to get a tax break on those fees. And I also think that this one size fits all in government quite often it goes wrong. Certainly there are some people who need to go to university, but also I'd want to target it at those students who perhaps are going to come back to the Isle of Man and give some benefit back to the Isle of Man as well. So I think it just needs tweaking, fine-tuning, and not one size fits all.
Well, some might say it did go through tweaking because it went back and forth for a long time. But I mean, scope of government, are you on board that there has to be reductions and the way they're doing it? Are you agreeing with the way they're doing it?
Generally, there has to be a reduction in the scope of government, and we discussed certain issues internally, such as civil service and everything else. But I think we need to go a little bit bigger than concentrating on just cutting civil service jobs. And I'm very keen on the proposal of looking at the whole way local government works. Are we over-governed in local government? And I think perhaps we are. Even if you look at Douglas alone, 18 town councillors and 8 MHKs for 26,000 population, 1 elected representative per 1,000. I think this does need looking at. I think there is a more efficient way of doing things.
I suppose people are always interested in, if you're in the UK politics, where would you be? Have you got yourself a place you would be on, if you were standing in the UK as a politician, left, right, centre, or which party?
I think I'd be Conservative. I think it's quite clear from my manifesto and my views. I'd be Conservative.
Finally, let's talk about Pinewood then, as a final act that the government's undertaken as a major item. How do you stand on that?
I'd have wanted a much more transparent and open discussion. It seems these decisions are taken and then discussed, and that's what I want to reverse. I think I want some more transparency in it. But so often we find that, for example, one of my manifesto points is perhaps taking a controlling interest in the steam packet group. And that, there's no money for that, but we tend to find money for all sorts of things. I'm concerned about government being almost involved in running businesses and taking decisions that really haven't perhaps been thought through fully. So again, I would have had to have been against that.
Okay. So finally, would you be one of Mr. Bell's boys, or would you be there chipping away in opposition?
I think a mixture of both, and let me be clear on this. If I was, whoever the Chief Minister was, who of the time came along to me, if I were elected and said, Clive, would you like to be a minister? I think there'd be some negotiation, because I think it's important that I don't compromise what I've said in my manifesto, what I've said in emails to people, what I've said verbally to people, as long as it was understood that my position on certain issues was quite clear. If that was acceptable to the Chief Minister, I would rather be at the centre of government, helping to change things rather than the outside. But I'm more than happy to voice my concerns, to raise the issues on the outside as well.